You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Meghan McCain, host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy herself, Democratic strategist Julie Rogensky, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, incoming White House press secretary and special advisor to the president-elect. Sean Spicer is here. We say you're outnumbered, but mostly you're welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is, it's good to be outnumbered.
You have the greatest socks I think I've ever seen on the couch.
I know.
Well done.
Those are fabulous.
They're official GOP socks. You can get them at GOP.com.
Oh, wow. I like it. Very cartoon colory. Very bright.
We're bright.
Yeah, glad to have you. All right. Senator Sessions gave opening remarks when this began just a couple of hours ago. 11 Republicans, 9 Democrats on the panel began questioning him. Critics went after his civil rights record. Senator Dianne Feinstein asked him to respond to a letter signed by 1,400 law professors from 49 states who oppose his nomination. The senator also read some of it. Here that is.
Nothing in Senator Sessions' public life since 1986 has convinced us that he is a different man than the 39-year-old attorney who was deemed too racially insensitive to be a federal district court judge. I want your response to this and answer to the question, how do you intend to put behind you what are strongly felt personal views?
I did everything I was required to do. And the complaints about the voter fraud case and the complaints about the Klan case that I vigorously prosecuted and supported are false. And I do hope this hearing today will show that I conducted myself honorably and properly at that time, and that I am the same person, perhaps wiser and maybe a little better, I hope so, today than I was then.
Other hot-button issues like abortion and gay marriage have also come up this morning. Senator Sessions says he would follow the law in those cases. And this headline, he said if he is confirmed, he will recuse himself from any investigation of the Clinton Foundation or former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's emails. Meanwhile, in an unprecedented move, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey is expected to testify against Sessions tomorrow. It will be the first time in history that a sitting senator will speak out against another sitting senator for a cabinet post during a confirmation hearing. But Sessions does have some high-profile support, as well as from former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, the first African-American woman to serve in that post. She says Sessions will work to ensure that everyone is given the voice that is deserved. Let's start there, Sean. Let's start with the kind of support that Sessions has going into this.
Well, it's interesting. He's got tremendous support from people like Condoleezza Rice. There's a group of black pastors that came out in support of him this morning. But the thing that I find interesting is that he did have support from someone like a Cory Booker. Last February, he put forward a bill with other senators to recognize the voting rights marchers in 1965. And Senator Booker took to the floor and said, I'm honored to have partnered with this individual, Senator Sessions, to do this. So it clearly looks like they're more interested in the politics of this than the substance. Senator Sessions has a 30-year record of working hard for all Americans, including African Americans. He led the effort to give Alabama native Rosa Parks the Congressional Gold Medal. He was a leader in the fight to restore the Voting Rights Act for 30 years. This is a guy who has shown by work and deed over the last 30 years his commitment to civil rights, to race relations, and frankly, it's a shame that the Senate is doing this. Earlier, and you mentioned this, that individuals from Code Pink stood up and tried to disrupt the democratic process. I think that Democrats should be held accountable and should be asked, do you think this is appropriate for left-wing groups to come in and interrupt a hearing?
An interesting question, because Senator Graham at one point said that, he was bringing up topics like immigration. He talked in detail about that. And he said, well, look, I'm helping you clear the room of the protesters now, because every time he would bring something up, people would jump up, shout, they'd be escorted out. What about this idea that he is recusing himself from anything having to do with a Hillary Clinton investigation?
Well, I think it's smart. I mean, Senator Sessions is someone who has a long history of understanding the law, both working in the Department of Justice, as a state attorney general, as a U.S. attorney, and he understands where those lines are, and I think that's why he's going to make a phenomenal U.S. attorney.
Meghan, as we've watched this, one of the things that has been said, as you kind of pull back, you'll get a little commentary, go back into it, is that Sessions is very calm. I mean, you can tell that he was very prepared for this. And Sean, you're nodding at this. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
It was very clear that he has been prepping and training for this for a while. I've actually been really impressed how he's done so far. The protests are wildly distracting, and I don't know who they need to get in control of that room, but I find it really inappropriate. Protests should be done outside at different times, especially by Code Pink. I think people came up dressed like Klan members. It is so inappropriate, and it's just adding to the theatrics of this, which I have such a problem with.
You know, for the entire campaign, myself, Kellyanne Conway, Jason Miller, Hope Hicks, we would get peppered with questions. So-and-so supports Donald Trump. Are you going to denounce them? I mean, it would be like, you know, some random person out in middle America but had written something in high school and they said, does Donald Trump denounce this person? I think that Democrats should be asked, are you going to denounce the tactics of Code Pink at a hearing like this? They need to be held accountable for the tactics on the left the same way that we're apparently held accountable for the tactics of people who have a right-leaning thought.
So it's interesting because I'm looking across the couch at Julie Roginski right now and you're nodding. What's going through your head?
I'll denounce it. I mean, I don't speak for the Democrats, Sean, but I think it's inappropriate. Code Pink, by the way, has protested Democrats, and you know this well, as much as they have, maybe not as much, but certainly have fairly often, not just Republicans. I mean, Code Pink is in a league of its own when it comes to protests. So I'll denounce it. I think it's inappropriate. But I will also say this, you know, let's focus on what's important here, not the protest of Code Pink, but of Senator Sessions. You brought up Senator Booker, who I know quite well, actually used to be a client of mine. You know, he's not somebody who is typically somebody who's a firebrand and goes off. And I think his concern is not so much that he partnered with Senator Sessions. I haven't spoken to him, but I assume his concern is not so much that he partnered with Senator Sessions on a resolution honoring somebody from 50, 60 years ago.
The Selma marchers, not just anybody. Exactly
right. But people who were, I think we could all agree, were people who deserve to be recognized, but are from before I was born, certainly from 50 years ago, if not longer. The thing that concerns Democrats, and I assume Senator Booker, is Senator Sessions' not just record on voting rights as a U.S. attorney back in Alabama, but certainly what he believes about voting rights since he's been in the Senate. Sure. Certainly his concern about criminal justice reform, which Senator Booker has been very, very, very outspoken on, something that Senator Sessions does not believe states have a right to do to the extent that the federal government thinks has a right to do, which is a very different thing from the usual states' rights things that Republicans want to support. For example, marijuana, which some states agree should be decriminalized, but he doesn't. Suddenly states' rights is not that important to Senator Sessions when it comes to issues like this. So these are issues that I think concern Democrats. We have a prison to
pipe. But I think they should. And I think that the issues should be of concern.
They should.
But the fact of the matter is that Senator Sessions' record and deeds should assure them. I mean, you look at back 30 years ago when he was a U.S. attorney prosecuting Klans members. I think you're absolutely right. You look at his vote and support for the Voting Rights Act to extend it by 30 years. His voting record, his actions as a U.S. attorney, as Attorney General back in Alabama, and his votes as a U.S. senator show that he actually is a champion.
What happened to the Republican Party where in 1986 they were so concerned about Senator Sessions that the Republican Senate voted him down? What happened to your party? What you have done over the last 4 years?
I think that's a great question. And you look at someone like Arlen Specter, who was one of the people on that panel that voted no, that before his death said, I regret that vote. I've come to know Jeff Sessions. This was bad. We should have confirmed him then.
That's Arlen Specter.
And I think that you've seen, but you're asking a question, and I'm saying that when you talked about the people that back then realized that in a lot of cases they didn't have the full story, they didn't understand the man and his commitment, and since that time he's continued to be, frankly, a champion for civil rights and racial relations.
And I would say this, though, Julie, the whole thing started today, obviously with Senator Grassley, but we heard from Senator Collins saying exactly what you're talking about with regard to Arlen Specter and how that had opened her eyes, and many people in the room had their eyes opened by the fact that he went Democrat, but then he said, you know what, I still support this particular individual based on the man that I've come to know. I want to get on to something else. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York made this statement about some of the confirmation process now being delayed. Let's watch that and talk more. All right, so this is a quote we're going to pop up on the screen, so you're going to hear me say it. We've gone from 6 hearings to 3 on Wednesday, and that is a good process. So many nominees are billionaires and corporate titans with complex financial holdings that raise the possibility of conflicts of interest, which requires careful scrutiny. May have also held views that are diametrically opposed to the president-elect's statements during the campaign, and they have an obligation to tell the American people where they stand now. Your thoughts?
This is the same Chuck Schumer that in 2008, when Republicans controlled the Senate, asked for swift consideration of the nominees. Tim Geithner, who was Treasury Secretary and by no means a poor individual, he urged swift consideration of him because we needed to deal with the financial concerns of the country. I think we would ask for the same standards that Senator Schumer set out in 2008 when he took Senator Obama's. He voted for 42 individuals in the nomination process. He's never concerned too much about the speed at which they've been confirmed. When Obama was first elected in 2008, Republican-controlled Senate approved 7 of them the first day in office and 5 the week after, 13 of them by voice vote. I think we would ask for the same standard Democrats asked for when President Obama was elected.
You know, Kennedy, I think it's fair to ask how much Democrats might be smarting by what Harry Reid did with the threshold for these nominees, particularly in the Senate, with 60 votes going down to 51. That benefited or would have benefited Democrats at the time. Now it's going to flip and benefit the Republicans.
Of course it does, and Senator Reid was warned about that at the time that they adjusted the rules, and this is exactly what happens, and frankly, it's exhausting for the American public, and I don't think it's the most important thing right now. I think the most important things we can be talking about, it's not just civil rights. We have to get off that issue at some point. Yes, it's very important, but he's not the Attorney General just of civil rights, but also of civil liberties. And one of my concerns is, you know, I understand that he's had a personal evolution in many areas of his life, but when it comes to marijuana laws and drug reform, it kind of frightens me that someone in that powerful of a position seems like he wants to kickstart a multi-billion-dollar drug war, which is a losing cause in this country. It has cost billions of dollars and millions of lives, and you now see, finally, there is a majority of Americans in this country who believe that marijuana should be legal. And that not only means that, you know, it's a states' rights issue, but also there have to be testing facilities where we can figure out if there is a medicinal benefit to marijuana. And I worry that this Attorney General is opposed to that, and he's not going to be asked the right questions by these senators who are grandstanding like Cory Booker.
Well, I think the president-elect himself has talked about the dangers and perils of drugs and alcohol abuse. It's something that is very personal to him. So I think you're going to find an administration that is going to be very, very careful in this area, because I think there's genuine concerns about whether or not how our country and how our young kids in particular have handled drugs and alcohol, and it's something that we've got to be careful.
I think President-elect Trump has actually been more sympathetic to the rehabilitation process, and I welcome that. He's also said that he supports medicinal marijuana, and I fear that's in diametric opposition to Senator Sessions, who said that he wants to take a much harder prosecutorial line against
Right. I just want to make sure everybody understands, when you come into a Trump administration, it's the Trump agenda that you are implementing, not your own. And I think that Senator Sessions is well aware of that.
Okay. All right. Sean, good to have you.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. The Obama administration is now slapping additional sanctions on 5 more Russians, including a close associate of Russian President Vladimir Putin. This ahead of what is expected to be a contentious hearing tomorrow on Capitol Hill on Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson's ties to Putin. So we've got that going on. And of course, we're watching today the very first one to tip off this week with Jeffrey Sessions of Alabama. We'll continue to let you know the headlines coming out of that. Also tomorrow, President-elect Trump is set for his first formal news conference since July. Sean's going to be quite busy, I think. It comes amid questions about Mr. Trump appointing his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, as a senior White House advisor. We'll get the incoming White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer's reaction to all of this. I love talking about you like you're not sitting right next to me. We're coming right back.